That's a good one. You know, I don't know what technically defines an old school fishing lure, but I think of baits like the spinnerbait that's been around a long time. It's caught tons of fish, but maybe doesn't get the notoriety that it once did. Another one that fits that category for me is the soft jerkbait. I remember when these baits came out, I think it was in the late 80s. Man, we had some incredible days fishing these baits up shallow because bass had never seen anything so erratic and that so perfectly mimicked an injured bait fish. And certainly the soft jerkbait is still a pretty popular bait, but it really seems like it gets overshadowed, especially in tournament results, with the popularity of the bladed jig in the last 15 years or so. And you know, the great thing about the soft jerkbait, it'll do some things that other baits won't. It's that really cool combination of power and finesse. How about we do a crash course on fishing the soft jerkbait? One of my favorite baits ever. All right, let's start with when do you throw the soft jerkbait? And really for me, anytime I'm in 5 feet of water or less, I feel like the soft jerkbait's a really good option. And I'm gonna use this bait to cover, you know, big, vast flats. And I can cover those flats really well. I can make long casts, work the bait up through cover, but I can also work that bait pretty quickly so I can be pretty efficient and also be pretty quick in covering those areas. Now, this is one of the few baits that actually seems to perform better the clearer the water gets. And because the bait has so many visual cues with that erratic behavior, it's just going to pull bass from a long way to attack the bait. This bait really shines around the spawn of the year. And you know, a lot of times those fish will just quit chasing moving baits on that 2 or 3 week window around the spawn. They won't hit a spinnerbait, they won't hit a square bill, but they'll still eat a soft jerkbait if it's presented right. And so that kind of lends itself to that combination of power and finesse that I talked about earlier. So I really like to work the bait 2 different ways, and it's really all predicated on the weather type that I'm faced with that day, specifically the amount of sunlight that I'm getting. And so on those cloudy, low light days, maybe you have some chop on the water with some breeze, working that bait pretty quickly just under the surface in between the cover is going to be really effective, because on those low light days, bass are out away from the bushes and they're going to be chasing and hunting, and the soft jerk bait is going to be a great way to catch them. Now, on days that are sunny and bright, that's going to put those fish much closer to the cover. It's going to put them in the shade. And you can still catch them with the soft jerk bait. And the way that I like to do it, I just make a long cast beyond the cover type that I'm fishing. I'm going to twitch the soft jerk bait right up to the cover and just let it fall right into the heart of the shade. And I catch a lot of fish this way by just letting the bait fall on pretty slack line. And sometimes you'll feel the tick, sometimes you'll watch the line jump. A lot of times you just lift the rod tip to move the bait and they've grabbed it. So that's a great way to catch them on that lift and drop technique on bright days. You know, there's several ways to rig the soft jerkbait, and there's a lot of adaptations to rigging the soft jerkbait that mostly involve trying to improve the landing percentage on these baits. Because if they're notorious for anything, it's balling up into the bend of the hook and inhibiting the hook set. And a lot of these techniques will have an open exposed hook, or maybe they'll have a treble hook stinger down below. But I just don't have that luxury fishing this heavy wood cover that I often fish here in Texas. And so I have to rig the bait weedless. And so to do that, I'm going to put it on a 3 or 4/0 extra wide gap hook, and that EWG hook really helps that bait, you know, pivot and swing away from that hook point and from the barb. And so those EWG hooks are a necessity to me. One thing that I think is really important is take your time and pay attention to how that hook point or how that hook is set into the plastic, because if it's off to one side or if you've got the bait kinked, you know, it's going to cause the bait to roll, and it's going to just not going to look as natural. So take your time and making sure that you get that bait really nice and straight on that hook point. Put that hook dead center into the back of the plastic, and then I'm going to skin hook it just to keep that hook point from getting exposed. And you know, most of the time I can fish this bait just about anywhere I want to fish it with that rigging technique right there. All right, let's talk about line setup for throwing the soft jerk bait. And I think fluorocarbon is the only way to go, because you're going to have that low visibility in clear water, but fluorocarbon also gives you a sink rate. So if you're trying to get that bait into that 5 or 6 foot zone, fluorocarbon is actually going to fall with that soft jerk bait. And really, for me, I think 15-pound either Seaguar Tatsu or Seaguar AbrazX are excellent choices. 15 pounds, plenty of strength to get a fish out away from cover, but it's not such a heavy line that it inhibits the action of the bait. And Tatsu and AbrazX are both just top of the line fluorocarbons. Tatsu is the double structure line. It's extremely soft and pliable, very, very good abrasion resistance. AbrazX is not a double structure line, but it also has those similar type qualities as Tatsu at a little lesser price point. So both of those are excellent choices for throwing the soft jerkbait. Now, it's really critical that you put a swivel about a foot or foot and a half above the hook. And because these baits are so erratic and they dart, they tend to roll sometimes, they'll really twist your line. That will eliminate that. And I use the same 15-pound fluorocarbon on the leader as I do on the main line. Regarding the specific soft jerkbait, hey, there are a lot of really good ones out on the market today. I've been throwing the Yamamoto D-Shad for, 10, 15 years now. And what I like about the D-Shad is it has a little extra salt content. So it makes that bait really dense and heavy, and I can throw it a long way, but it still has that really nice, soft, supple action. That's a great bait. So, hey, I want to close with this. Whenever you're twitching the bait, you want to make sure that you're twitching that bait on slack line. And what I mean by that is just making sure that rod tip recoils back to the jerkbait in between the twitches. Whatever your cadence is, allow that rod tip to recoil. And what that does is it puts maybe 6 inches of slack in the line, just like you're fishing, say, a topwater walking bait. And that really allows that bait to cut hard left and right. And those really hard, erratic cuts, that's what triggers the bass. Hey, hopefully that's given you some pointers on fishing the soft jerkbait. It's one of my all-time favorites. And if you're somewhat new to fishing, the soft jerkbait's a really foundational soft plastic that you need to add to your arsenal. And it's a bait that I feel like you have to have tied on anytime you're fishing shallow water. Hope it puts a ton of fish in the boat for you soon.